This video will demonstrate the level 1 case problem of chapter 3 that starts on page 215. So we're going to go, the information is in week 5, so I'm going to click on week 5 and I need to click on week 5 again. And I need to download the Indiana spreadsheet. Alright, so here it is. Now what the directions say is to create a bar chart to illustrate the differences in trips per traveler and miles per traveler of the average Indiana resident, the average U.S. resident, and the average Indiana visitor. So you can see that we have a whole bunch of data here. And this is a little more complicated than creating a bar chart where you just have some data that's laid out nice and neat. Here we've got to pick and choose what data we want to display in the chart. We'll see when we go to the origin states that we'll be able to do that a little bit easier. So the way that you do this is because I can't just highlight, normally you can just highlight a whole a whole set of data, and then you can click on insert and create a bar chart. I'm going to show you how not to do this because it won't work. And so it does something like this, and you can see that the program is confused because it doesn't really know what we want. So in a simple spreadsheet, when you've got data just displayed with like two different sets of data, it will work pretty nicely. But in this case, it's too busy. There's too much stuff in the spreadsheet. Alright, so we're going to pick and choose instead. So I can do the same thing. I'm going to click Insert, and I need to click a bar chart, and I'm going to just choose a simple bar chart there. Now, because I didn't highlight anything in here for it to chart, the system doesn't know what to do, so I'm going to build it. So when I click Insert a Chart, I get Chart Tools up here. And so you can see the Chart Tools here. And what I want to click is on the Design. You have Design, Layout, and you get different things as when you click those tools. The first I'm going to click on is Design. And over here in the Data group, I've got Select Data. So I have to build this chart from scratch because, like I said, it's too busy in here, too much data in here for it to know what to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is click Add here, and then I'm going to give this a series name, and I'm going to call this the United States. Then I have to tell it what data do I want to connect to that series. So then I click on this. Oh, I could do this a different way too. I'm going to do that different. I can actually choose that from my chart, so I can tell it I want this, and it pulls that in. So I clicked on United States, and it pulls, instead of me typing it by hand, which you can do it that way as well, I can go ahead and put a cell reference in there. Hit Enter, and then I have to tell it what values do I want with that. So then I'm going to click on this, which lets you move into the chart. And I need the United States for 2003, 2013, and I need the trips per traveler. So I'm going to click on these two right here. So that gives me the data for those for the United States for 2003, 2013, and hit Enter, and then hit OK. Now notice what happened here. I need to label. You can see over here in the chart behind it, and I'll move this out of the way, that I'm getting a 1 and a 2. So I'm going to edit that horizontal axis, and I'm going to go ahead and select that. So I click that button, and then I'm going to click 2003, 2013. It puts in those cell references. Hit Enter, and then hit OK. And now you'll see that behind this that I can see the 2003 and 2013. So it changed the horizontal axis. So far I've got the United States. So now I want to add visitors to Indiana. So I'm going to click on Add, and I do the same thing. I can choose, I can select the range by clicking on this button here, and I'm going to click that as the cell reference, and now I need to tell it what values do I want. So I'm going to click on this to go into the spreadsheet, and for Indiana I want the 2003-2013 trips per traveler as well. So I'm going to click and hold, drag that across, get those two values, hit Enter, and I'll click OK. So you can see behind here it's building now. So now I need the visitors. So I'm going to click Add, people who visit the area. I'm going to click Add, And this time I don't really see Indiana, United States, and people who visit areas kind of a long label. So I'm actually going to hand type that in, and I'm just going to call it visitors. And then I need to tell it where I'm going to get that data, so I'm going to click on the series value on this little icon here. And I'm going to get the trips per traveler for visitors to Indiana. Hit enter and click OK. Alright, when I did that, I lost my horizontal axis. I'm going to fix that. I'm going to hit edit and choose arrange for that again. And click OK. Now that's back. So if you have that problem, go ahead and fix that. Now, I'd rather have visitors above that, so I have visitors highlighted and I can move that up. So I can reorder how my series looks by using these buttons here. If I don't want something in there, I can click on it, hit remove, and if it isn't showing up right, I can highlight it, which one I need, and I can hit edit. But in this case it looks okay, so I'm going to click OK. So there we go. We have a nice little chart here, but we can do some formatting to it to make it look a little bit better. So what I'm going to do now, I've got my data in there the way that I want. I'm going to click on layout, and I need to add a chart title to it. So here in the labels group, I can click on chart title, and I want it to display above the chart. Make this a little bigger. Alright, when you do that, you get a text box, and you can edit a text box by just clicking in there. I'm going to just click it, and I'm going to change that and say that this chart is trips per traveler. And click outside of it. Alright, so here's some data that's really nice and easy to read. I can see that I've got United States in one color, visitors in Indiana in another color, and we can see what that looks like. So that's a nice little chart. Alright, I can move that chart the way that you move it. One thing you need to do when I click outside the chart, you notice how the border around this changes. When I click in the chart, the border changes to show that I'm editing the chart. The other thing that happens is that your chart tools appear. When I click outside of it, the chart tools disappear. The chart's no longer selected. So I'm going to make this a little smaller again on my zoom. And I'm going to move this chart. So I'm going to select it, and I want to just move it to be underneath my data. So I'm going to put it over here. And I can make that look neat, maybe as large as my data there. And there we go. Alright, so the second thing that we need to do is create a chart for miles per traveler. So basically the same idea. I'm going to deselect, because just a second ago I had that selected when I moved it. And the other thing you can do, you can see that I've got sizing, I forgot to say this, you've got sizing tools here on the corners, on the sides, corners, the bottom, and the top. So normal type of sizing tools. So depending on the way your arrow looks, it will do different things. I can make it longer or smaller. I'm going to put that back to be the same size. Or if I use the corner tools, I will size the whole thing in so that everything remains, the ratios remain the same on everything of the original. So I'm going to put that back the way it wants. So that's how you use the sizing tools. Okay, double arrow like this means you can move it. I'm going to move that back. And I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller. Alright, so now we're going to make a chart just like we did, and we're going to do miles per traveler. So we had the trips per traveler, and now we need to create a chart for the miles per traveler. So same thing, I'm going to click outside of that. I'm going to hit insert, and I'm going to do another bar graph. And you can play with the different styles of the graphs. There's a lot of styles available. So now I need to build this thing. So my chart tools came up, I have design, and I need to select data. So the same thing. I'm not using data chart up here because I would be defining within here what data I'm going to be using. But once again, you'll see this in a minute on how to do this. So I'm going to click add, and I'm going to start with United States again. So I'm going to build that, United States, hit enter to take it. Then I have to tell it what values I want for the United States, and this time I want the miles per traveler. So I need this data here. miles per traveler, and I'll click OK. And you notice here I'll edit this in a minute. I can do it whenever I want. So now I'm going to go ahead and get the visitors, miles per traveler, so I'm going to hit Add. Click on this. Come over here and tell it what data you want to look at. Here I'm getting the miles per traveler. Hit Enter, and then, oops, did that wrong. Let me just get rid of this. Did it in the wrong spot. So the series name is going to be Visitors. And then I'll click on here and tell it what data I want for that series. And hit Enter and click OK. Now I need to add Indiana. So I can click on the series name. Since I have a heading there that I like, I'll just choose that. Hit Enter. And then I have to tell it what data I want to display. And here's the miles per traveler. And I'll hit Enter to accept that. Click OK. Alright, so I've got my 3 pieces of data that I want. Now I'm going to edit the horizontal axis. So then I'll click this to go into it, and I want 2003-2013 for my horizontal axis. Click OK, so kind of the same idea. Everything's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and give that a label. So I need to click on Layout, Chart Title, and I want it above the chart. And I will highlight that and call it miles per traveler. Alright, that looks very similar to the way that it should look. Alright, I'm going to move that one too, so you can see how I'm moving that. Because the chart's selected, if I deselect, once again it looks different on the outside. I don't have any sizing handles. Just click in it to select the chart, and I want to move it. So I'm going to move it below that trips per traveler. It takes me because my screen is smaller, I'm going to put that over here. Underneath that, I'm going to size it. Now the other important thing to do, so that's number 1. So I created a bar chart to illustrate the differences in trips per traveler and miles per traveler for the Indiana resident, the average U.S. resident, and the average Indiana visitor. So you kind of had to ask yourself, was I going to use this data? But it was specific. It was telling you to specifically choose the Indiana visitor, not visitors to the United States. So you had to make a choice there. What data were you going to use? Obviously it asked for Indiana visitors, so we wanted to use this and not this. Alright, we could have added a 4th row by saying visitors to the United States and done a comparison there as well. The other thing you want to do when you do this is you want to see how it looks on the paper. So I'm going to view that. I'm going to hit my print preview. And it's only picking up the chart because I still had that chart selected. So I'm going to go back to my home page to get out of that. I'm going to click make sure I don't have anything selected. Let's view it again and see what we're getting. Alright, here we go. And you can see that this is going on to 3 pages. I've got 1 of 3. So I'm going to click through that and see what I'm missing here. So a little bit of one of the charts is hanging over. So I'm going to go back to the home page and see if I can size that a little bit to get it all to fit onto 1 page. If I move this up just a little bit, that might do the trick. And okay, now it's putting my pages in there, and I can see these dotted lines that my chart's going over. So to make it easy on myself, I could play with sizing those charts, making them a little bit smaller. But I'm going to go back to print preview, and I'm going to tell it to oh, I still have a chart selected. I need to deselect that chart. Go back to print preview, and I'm going to use the scaling and see how it looks. I'm going to tell it to fit the sheet on 1 page. So this is a pretty nice tool. I have just a little bit hanging over, and so there we go. When it did that, it fits it onto 1 page. Now I can go back to the home page. I can spread that out a little bit because now I can see where my pages are ending. The other thing you can do is hit view, and I can tell it to show me the page break preview. So under view, you have the workbook views, and I'm going to do a page break, and you'll get this message. That's okay. Now I can kind of see where my pages are, and what I want to do is move this chart down a little bit to give them a little more space in between. And I haven't gone on to 2 pages, so that's going to work okay. Let's see what happens if I move it down a lot. Oh, because I have fit on 1 page selected, it's just going to make it smaller and smaller. So I actually need to go back, and I'm going to go back to View and Normal View, and go over here, and I'm going to take off scaling this time. Oops, I keep doing that. I need to deselect. Because I had fit sheet on one page, no matter where I moved it, it was going to make it fit onto one page. So be careful of that. I'm going to say no scaling. And you can see now what it's done. So I'm going to go back to home and fix that. Because it was really just going over just a tiny bit. So I think I'd like to keep it a bigger size. We can see the page break is right here. I'm going to move that up. And maybe I will go ahead and change the size of those charts just a little bit. Make them just a little bit smaller. Move this up. And see where my page breaks are. And get that to fit above the page break. So there we go. I could make this, I can move this out so it's more evenly sized right to the data above it. So different things to make it look right. You certainly wouldn't want to have a presentation or a printout where your graph flowed onto a couple of pages. I'm going to need to deselect the chart. Okay, there we go. So that's looking pretty good. I have no scaling. I sized the charts a little bit, and now it's fitting nicely on the page. The other thing you can do is do a page setup, and I could tell it. I can click on margins and change that bottom margin so I can spread it out a little bit more. You might want to be careful when you change your top. If you had any sort of a header on the spreadsheet, you'd have to be careful they don't run into each other. So you always want to view. And now I can see I'm still going over onto 2 pages. So let's see, something is just a little bit hanging over. I'm not sure what's in there. Oh, the reason it's doing that is I'm going to go ahead and set my page print. So I'm going to highlight what I want to print, go to page layout, hit print area, and hit set print area. Now when I'm looking at that, I should just be getting what I want to see. Okay, so now it's on page 1 of 1. I could space those out just a little bit more, messing with this just a little bit. You can kind of get the idea here. I can go down to the bottom of this page break, maybe move that just a little bit so we get some space in between. Let's look at how that looks. Click outside. Alright, so that's looking pretty nice. Alright, so that's the first tab, Travel Characteristics. Alright, the second is the number 3 on page 215. It says to create a bar chart to illustrate a state-by-state comparison of the number of residents. So here's the origin states. We have a spreadsheet. It's called Origin States. It's in the same workbook in a different tab. And they want us to create a chart that will illustrate this data per state for those visiting Indiana and those that are from Indiana. Now this chart's going to be a lot easier to create because the data is straightforward. There's not a bunch of stuff in between. As opposed to over here, we had a lot of data that we didn't want to include in our chart. When we go to this spreadsheet, the information is very straightforward. So I'm going to just highlight that whole set of data. So that's like selecting the data that you want, and then I'm going to click on Insert, and we'll do a bar chart again. And look, it creates the graph for us. Now it's pretty squishy. Kind of hard to read, kind of hard to see, but it does a nice illustration. So I'm going to move that to the top here, and we're going to see, I'm going to illustrate something to you. So really straightforward. When you've got some data like this, it formats it very nicely. As opposed to over here, we have data that's kind of all mixed up. You can't do that. But here it works nice. I just highlight all of the information, and Excel knows how to graph it. So I'm going to just do a little bit of work to make this look prettier. And the way that I'm going to just size this. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm actually going to pull this down a little bit, and we'll make it look a little bit bigger. So different things you can do with it to spread it out, make it more readable. You can make it bigger that way. One thing I want to do, we're going to look at it, make sure that we don't have any information that's when we print the graph that we can see it. So when I do that, I can make this even a little bigger perhaps. Alright. Now I need to put a chart on it. So I'm going to click on my layout, And I'm going to include a chart table above, and you can play with this to see what happens. If I choose that, do you see what it does? What I chose was centered overlay title. So it overlays the title over the chart. I don't really like that. So I'm going to do above the chart, and it puts it here. So now we're going to give that a title. So I just click inside the text box, and I'm going to call this Origin States of People Who Visit Indiana, and Destination States of Those from Indiana. (2013). Okay, I hit enter. Oops, don't want to hit enter. Just click outside of it because it's a text box, and that puts it over the chart. All right, if I make this, if I size this a little bit more, I can get that title to fit a little bit better over the chart. So I'm just sizing this chart, but you can see what's going to happen when I try to print it. And maybe I want to make this just not so long. All right. The other thing I can do with this is I can move this. I can click on this, and anything that's in, when I get a box around it, I can grab it. It's just like any text box, and I can move it. Alright, but what I want to do is to put this on the bottom, and that would be pretty hard. If I just grabbed it and moved it, it wouldn't change the formatting of this. So what I'm going to do is just have the chart selected and stay in the layout, and I want to go to Access Titles. And that happens to be a vertical. Okay, I have to decide if that's a vertical axis, and actually that's not correct. Actually this is a legend. It's not a title. So I'm going to click on Legends, and then I have some choices, and I want to show that legend at the bottom. So I'm going to click on that, and you can notice that it took that legend from the right and it put it down here at the bottom. So that works pretty nicely. Takes up less room actually on my chart. So pretty happy with this chart. I'm going to move this up, and then I'm going to look at it on the page. I'm going to move it up so I can chart that information. It gives a good visual representation of the data, something that's really easy to see and grasp. When you just give people data, it's not as easy for them to do comparisons, but here we can kind of see some nice comparisons. So I'm going to look at that, and I can already guess it's not going to look right, but we'll look at it. So I'm going to hit my print preview. Oops, it's doing the chart. I'm going to just click outside the chart and do that view again. And you'll notice what's happening. It's going on to 5 pages. I can see down here that it's going on to 5 pages. Alright, so if I click through that, what's happening with it? Well, everything is just too big. Alright, so there's another thing you can do. There's no way that this chart is going to fit on one page with all of that data that I've got. So I'm going to click back on Home, and I'm going to select that chart again. And this time I'm going to select Design. And in your Design Chart tools, I have Move Chart. So I'm going to click on Move Chart, and you get a choice. I can move that chart into a new sheet, which is what I want, and I can call it Origin States of Visitors. Okay, and it's going to go into its own little sheet, and I'm going to click OK. And so what that does, you'll notice down here on the tabs, I created a tab that's the Origin States of Visitors, and I've got my original here. It took the chart away, and it put it here in Origin States of Visitors. So if I was going to copy and paste this into a PowerPoint, which by the way, it's really easy to do that now, I can actually copy this, put it into my clipboard, and paste it into a PowerPoint. So it just removed it from the original spreadsheet, and it stuck it in here into its own tab. So that's a nice little tool. And you can see that it formatted it to fit it very nicely. Now if I look at that, now I have a nice chart that's fitting on there very nicely. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the home page. Alright, so you always need to check the way that your chart looks when it is going to be printed, so you always want to view that. So that was I'm going to show you how you can edit this. If I click on this chart, I want to click here, not here. If I click in the middle of the chart, all that I'm getting is I'm selecting this information, but I want to make sure that I select the whole chart, so I'm going to click this, and I've got my sizing tool, so I know the chart is selected. One of the things that it said to do is to rank the information in this chart by the states with the most visitors to Indiana. Now we saw that Indiana is from most visitors. We want those visiting Indiana is in blue. And we wanted to put that so that we could see that differently. So I'm going to go back to the origin state spreadsheet, and I can change this, and my chart will automatically update. So once again, let's look at the chart, and we'll notice that we've got it, that we've got all the information here. Alright, so I'm going to select this data, highlight all of it, and then I'm going to go to Data and Sort. And I want to sort this. Over here you have My Data has headers. Notice what's happening here. It thinks that this first thing is a header, and it's not. So I'm going to take that away, and then it highlights Illinois as well. And I want to sort this by those visiting Indiana. So I want to sort by column B, and smallest to largest is what's being selected, so let's click OK. But it wants us to chart by the states with the most visitors. So that isn't quite what I want. I want the most visitors first. So I'm going to click on Sort again and change this to largest to smallest. And there we've got those visiting Indiana. We can see what states that looks like. Alright, if I go back to my chart, the information will automatically update because it's tied to this data set. Alright, so that's a pretty nice tool. Okay, so that takes us through step 3 of this level 1 assignment. Now we have to go to step 4, and we're going to use this next tab, which is travel rates. I'll come back here, just deselect that. I'm going to get travel rates. Okay, in this spreadsheet, we're looking at data that the Indiana Department of Tourism is looking at in order to make some advertising decisions. So they want to use this information that's in the spreadsheet to find out information about how people travel, the purpose of their travel, their income levels, and their age and gender. So we can't just highlight this whole spreadsheet and make a graph. Excel would not know what to do with it. It's too much. It's too busy. Too much information. It's also a lot of information for somebody to just look at and make decisions with. And so that's why charts just kind of streamline the information for people to quickly gain information about data that they're looking at. So we're going to do it the way that we did the first one, and we're going to have to build the spreadsheet. So if we look at this, you can see that we've got means of transportation for people who live in the area and people who visit the area. So they're wanting to know information and do that comparison. So there's two sets of people they're looking at, people who visit and people who live in the area. And we need to make a chart that describes how people travel. So here's the means of transportation for people who live in the area. And then if we scroll down, we have people who visit the area and the same sort of means of transportation that we're looking at. So we're going to build a chart here again, and we're going to use a bar chart again. So I'm going to just choose a bar chart. Oops. I'm going to click on that and delete it. Alright. I don't want to have any data selected, so I'm going to insert a bar chart again, and here I get a blank chart area. So I need to click on Design, which is already there. I have a chart selected. My chart tools come up. I have Design, and I need to select my data. Alright, so now I have, I had to take a break there. I have a chart here, blank chart, and I need to build it. So I have my chart tools, click on Design, and I'm going to click Select Data. So, once again, you won't use this chart data range because it's too complicated, so we're just going to build the chart here. So I'm going to click on Add, And what I'm doing, I'm creating the means of transportation is what we want. We're wanting this information in a chart. So I'm going to click on Add, and the series name is going to be people who live in the area. And I'll hit Enter, and then I need to choose this information, the data for this information. So I'm going to click on this to go into the chart, and I'm going to make a mistake on purpose. I'm going to get that total down there. This is a total of travel of this series. And I'm going to hit Enter so you can see what that looks like. Alright, I'm going to click OK. And we're going to add another one here. We're going to add another series, and this time I want it to be for the people who visit the area. So I need to scroll down in my chart. So I'm just using my scroll key. You could use your tool over here if you need to. But this time it's going to be the people who, I'm going to select this, and I want people who visit the area. And hit Enter, and then I have to tell it what data do I want. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to choose this. And hit Enter, and say OK. Click OK. Alright, so I'm going to scroll back up here so we can see our chart here. I have to click OK to come back up so we can see the chart. Now do you see this? I still have a lot of formatting to do with this, but do you see this extra line here? That's kind of weird. My scale over here says I have people who live in the area in blue, people who visit the area, so I would expect to see 2 lines for each of the different modes of travel. I'm going to fix this in just a second. But this extra line up here is because when I was selecting that data, I grabbed that total. This was a total of all of these numbers. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to select that chart again, get my chart tools, hit Design, and select Data again. Now I need to go and edit that. So I'm going to click on that to select it and hit Edit. And this is okay. I still want people who live in the area. I need to edit this. And then I don't want to get that 23,000. So I'm going to click and tell it that I only want the data through here. Hit Enter, and then notice that line in my chart went away. And I'm going to click OK. Alright, now I need to edit this horizontal axis. So I'm going to click on Edit because I don't know what 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is. I need to actually get this information in there. So I'm going to click on Edit and tell it what label I want for that. So I'm going to highlight all of that, puts it in here, hit Enter, click OK. And now I've got those descriptions over here. And if I move this over, we can see that that's building pretty nicely. Alright, so I've got a chart. It's kind of squishy, looks kind of weird. It doesn't have everything, but I've got the data that I want in there. So I'm going to click OK. Alright, now I can do some formatting of this chart. So I'm going to use my layout tool, and I want to put a chart title on it. And once again, I like doing above the chart. So we're going to use that, and I can just click in here inside the text box and edit that. And I'm going to call this Means of Travel. Alright, you'll notice how this is kind of scrolling over into a second line. I don't like that either, so I'm going to size it so it will fits all together there. Now I don't really know what this is down here, do I? I know that this is the means of travel, but what is the scale here? So I'm going to add an axis title. Alright, so what kind of axis is that? Is that a horizontal? That's a horizontal axis. This is a vertical axis. Horizontal is here. So I need to edit that horizontal axis title, and I want it to be below it. Right, and I get another text box, so I'm going to just highlight that, and I'm going to tell it that this is person trips in thousands. I'm going to click outside of it, and so now I've got a label there. Alright, so it's looking pretty decent. I kind of know what all of that stuff is. I'm going to move this chart to, I still have it selected, so I can grab it, and I'm going to just move it down below. Now I could move all of these charts into their own, sometimes it's easier to move it, like I'm having to mess around with that. If I make it really small, make my view small, so I'm using my scroll bar, my zoom tool right here to make this smaller, so then I can grab it and not have to keep grabbing it and moving it, seeing where it's at. So that's a little bit easier. Now I might want to size this. You can see when I'm in a smaller view, I can see it better. So I'm going to size it now. And there we go. Now I'm going to make my zoom bigger so I can see how that looks. So now I've got a chart that looks a little bit better. It's kind of sized over the data, but I'm going to make that just a little bit smaller, maybe move it a little bit this way. All right, so there's one chart right there. You could also select that chart, click on Design, and you can move it into its own tab. So just depending on how it looks when we try to print it, we'll see if it fits okay. As a matter of fact, I think I'll look at that now. I'm going to deselect that and see what that looks like. Alright, I've got 4 pages here, and you can see I'm going to scroll through all of those pages to see. I can see that my chart's flowing onto another page. Not really great there. I could go back to the home page, and I've got some data in here. You can see that my headings are pretty big, so I can maybe size that. Here I'm seeing my page break right here. This is a page break. So I've got these big titles over my data. But I've just got little numbers in here. So maybe I can size that up just a little bit to make this fit better. So I'm just playing with it to make it... Okay, I lost that. Do you see when I sized it what happened? I lost the in thousands. So you can hit wrap text, and there it fits it better there. So there's another tool. Be careful that you don't use things when you're sizing information. I've almost got all of this spreadsheet on one page by sizing it here. Not quite enough. Still have this one hanging out. Can I do anything with this? Maybe I can make that just a little bit smaller. Alright, so now I'm inside of a whole page right here. Here's the second page here. It's going on, and I can also see that now my graph is fitting on one page as well. But the data is going over onto 2 pages. Okay, I wouldn't want to lose this, so I'm going to show you some formatting with that too. The way that you fix that is you go to page layout. If I were to look at this and print it, you can see that when I go onto the second page, I get my graph, but I don't have any headings up here. And you sure don't want to have to hand type those in. So the way that you fix that is you go to the page layout tab and page setup, and you go to sheet and then rows to repeat at top. And I want this row, well, maybe I want all of this to repeat at the top. Hit enter and click OK. Now let's preview that and let's see how that looks now. So it's still going on to 2 pages. That's okay because this is a lot of data. And I'm going to go to the second page, and I can see that I got the heading of that of what was on the first page to go onto my second page. So now I know what my columns look like. One thing I might do is center this, and so this is actually looking kind of nice, and I can probably fit one more graph on here as well. I'm going to go back to the home tab, and what I might do is center this. So I click the number 3 and I can hit center, and that centers it over the data so that when I look at it again, that looks a little bit better. Alright, so always appearance. And appearance is important, especially if you're presenting this to colleagues or to a presentation to a group of people. You always want your work to look professional. Alright, so we did the means of transportation. That graph is looking pretty nice. Now I'm going to go ahead. I have a little bit of room, maybe not a ton of room, to fit one more graph in here, but we'll try. But I'm going to build that graph up here. So same thing, I can't just highlight some data and make a graph. I'm going to have to build it. So the next one that we had to do, we had to illustrate how people travel. We need to know what is their purpose of travel. So here we have a main purpose. So we're going to build a graph of that. So once again, I'll hit insert, and I want a bar graph. I've got some data selected somewhere, so I'm going to hit delete, make sure that I don't have anything selected. Nothing is selected. And I can actually think of a way to do this a little bit more quickly too, but we'll not do that right now. I'm going to hit insert and make a bar graph. Okay, so there I've got a blank graph. And this time we want to build a graph that shows the purpose of people's travel. Right, so my chart tools come up. I have my design. I want to click on design. That's where the select data is at. And this should start to look very familiar. So I'm going to click add. And I have to tell it the series, I have to choose a series name. So click this to get into the chart, and I still want the people who live in the area. I'm still comparing that. Hit enter, and then I have to choose the series value. So this time it's going to be the main purpose, and so we want this information here. We're going to stay so we have consistency in our graphs. What column are we going to use to display? Well, we've been using this column here, so I'm going to stick with that. Hit enter, click OK. Alright, so I've got that, and I'll format this in a minute. I'm going to add, and I'm going to get the people who visit the area. So the series name will be people who visit the area. I'm going to hit enter. Then I have to choose the series value. And this time I want the main purpose, so I'm going to choose this information here. Hit enter. Alright, so that should build my data. Here I need to change this. I need a description here. So I'm going to edit the horizontal axis. And we want this information to be on our horizontal axis. Doesn't matter where you choose it from. And you can see that that's coming up nicely. So let's look at what our chart looks like now. Okay, so we need to do some sizing again and make this look pretty. So we can do the same sort of things. We'll put the same sort of labels on it. So I'm going to choose my layout, choose a chart title, above the chart, give that a title, and this is the main purpose. I'm going to call it main purpose of travel. That's a little more descriptive. Here I want to size this. I'm going to move that out just a little bit. Now I need something down here. What is that? What is this axis referring to? So I need the axis title, and it once again is the primary axis, and I want it to be below it. And I'm going to change that to person trips. Click outside of that. That's looking a little better. I know what I'm looking at here now. And I'm going to make this smaller again with my zoom tool. I'm going to make it a lot smaller so I can grab that and move it. So I can get it down here where I want it. If I grab that and move it here, you can see that it's going to go over just a little bit. So I'm going to size that. I can see where my page endings are. See if I can move that up just a little bit. Barely going to fit. I'm going to just toggle this, move this, just nudge it up just a little bit, nudge this one up just a little bit. Alright, so that should be fitting on 2 pages. I'm going to deselect that and let's take a look at it. Okay, so there's my first page, here's my second page. So that's not looking too bad. Something I can change here is my page ending on the bottom. Once again, page setup, go to margins, change that bottom margin a little bit. And I can space those out a little bit more now. Go back to the home page, I'm going to nudge those down. I'm going to bring this down because I changed that bottom margin. I can get a little bit of space between those graphs. Alright, let's see what that looks like now. Oops, keep doing that. Got to deselect the chart and then look at it. We'll go to page 2. Alright, I see something funny here. That looks funny. I've got a heading there. That's where your page endings can come in nice. I can actually move that. So you don't want that. You don't want a label hanging over one page. That doesn't look very nice. Because when I look at the second page, I don't really know what that is. And that happened because I changed my bottom margin. So I'm going to go back to the home page, go to View, and I want Page Break View. And I can change this. Here's my page break right here. I'm going to just click on that little blue dashed line, click it, move it up, so my page break comes before the word age. I'm going to make that bigger so you can see it. So I'm page break preview. I can grab that line and I can move it around. But I actually want it above here. Right? Go back to normal view. And now I'm going to look at that, make sure I don't have any charts selected. And I'll look at that and see how it looks. Looking better and better. Alright, so that looks pretty nice. I've got 2 charts in there. It fits nicely on the page. This is labeled nicely on the second page, so things are looking pretty good. Alright, so we finished that part. Now we did the purpose of travel. Now we need the income levels. So I'm going to make this bigger so we can see the data that we're working with. Alright, so now I'm going to create a chart for people's income levels. It's too big. I want to be able to see the chart I'm working on, so I'm going to make that a little smaller so I have some space over here. So now we need to create a chart for people's income levels, and finally you'll create a chart that's for people's age. So because we already have the design of the way we want the chart to look, I can copy this. Because I have the basic format of this, I can copy the chart. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to select the chart and then right click and copy. And then I'm going to come outside the chart. I'm going to put it up here. It might do something funky on me, but we'll try it. And then I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste it. Alright, so what I want on this chart is I need the income level, but I have the basic format. I want the chart to look the same. All I need to do is change the data, and all the rest of my format will stay intact. So this is just a copy. Here it is up here. If I go down, I've got means of travel down here. It stayed intact. I'm going to change this, and you can see how I can do this really quick. So I'm going to select the chart, click Design in my chart tools, and then hit Select Data. So here we're wanting to change the income level. So people who live in area doesn't change, but I'm going to edit the data that it's looking at. So I'm going to hit Edit. People who live in area is okay. My series, I'm going to edit that, because before I was choosing this, but now I want the income level. So I'm going to choose this instead. So click and hold, drag it down, hit Enter, and say OK. Alright, so now I need to edit the one for the people who visit the area. So I'm going to edit that. And here we are, people who visit, and I want the series. That's okay, that's alright, I want to keep that. Click on here, and I'm going to grab the income levels and hit Enter and click OK. So if I go, now I know I need this. I need to edit my horizontal axis to show this instead. So I'm going to hit Edit, click on this tool, and I want to have the income level to be my labels on the left. So I'm going to hit Enter and click OK. And let's click OK and look at how that looks now. So see how quickly I did that? So I've got a title that says means of travel, but I'm talking about income levels here. So we just need to change that. I can double click on this. Oops, you double click it, you get some tools. I'm going to highlight that and just call this income level instead. And we were still using the column that says person, trips, and thousands, so that's okay. This stayed the same. So there I've got my third chart, just lickety-split as fast as that. Alright, so I'm going to make that smaller and I'm going to move it down. I'm going to zoom, use my zoom tool, so I can move that thing. It's going to go on to a second page. Okay, a third page actually, because we're already on 3 pages. I'll zoom that up. Alright. We'll have to see how that's looking. Now I need to do one more, and that's age and gender. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to copy this and paste it up here so I can see what I'm doing. Alright, we're going to edit that. So I'm going to click on Design. It's just a copy of the other one. Select my data, and I'm going to edit. I'm going to edit people who live in the area, and this time we're after age and gender. So this is okay, people who live in area. Now I need to choose the age and gender. So I'm going to choose this and hit Enter and click OK. Then I need to grab the correct data for the people who visit the area for their age. So I'm going to click on that to select it, hit Edit, and oops, I did that wrong. I need to go back and fix that. I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to go back to this one, make sure I'm getting the right data here. I'm going to edit that. I need to double check it because I think I did it wrong. I need to make sure it's people who visit the area, and I need their age. So did I do it right? It's B25. Yeah, that's okay. Alright, so people who visit the area, I'm going to click Edit, and here's the people who visit the area, and I need their age. So I'm going to click here to select that. Oops, did something wrong. Let me do that again. Alright, I messed this up. I need to click on that, and I need people who visit the area, and then click on this to get their age, and hit Enter. So make sure you hit Enter, that's what I did wrong, and click OK. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Now I also need to, in this chart, I can also put their gender. So I'm just going to add a series to grab that. So I'm going to hit add. And the series name will still be people who visit the area, people who live in the area. Hit enter. And this time I want it to be their gender. So I'm going to select this data, hit enter, click OK. And I need to add another one for people who live in the area, people who visit the area, select the data, hit their gender, and click OK. Alright, I'm going to edit this category access, and so I'm going to hit edit, and I want this to be the age. Okay, so we've got the age there, and click OK. Let's see how this chart looks. I already know it's not going to look right, and I did this on purpose because I want you to be very careful in how you do this. So I have a chart now that I don't like the way it looks. It looks confusing. I don't really know what's going on with it. So I know I've got to edit that, and I'll have to make some decisions. So I'm going to go to Design and go to Select Data. And what I really need is for my horizontal axis to have the gender of the people. I don't need to add people who live in area because that is my legend that I want to stick with. So those last two that I did, I'm going to get rid of those. I'm going to just edit those. Oops, not edit. I'm going to actually remove it. And this one, people who visit the area, I'm going to remove that. Alright, so what I need to edit is my horizontal axis. So this is looking better. At least I've got the income levels on there for the two types of people that I'm looking at. So I just need to add in the male and female, the gender of the people that I'm looking at. So I'm going to hit edit on the horizontal axis. And before we had defined this is right here. I'm going to edit that. I'm going to click on this to edit it. Let me do this again. I'm going to hit edit, click on this, and I'm going to hold my control key down. It's already flashing over this, but I could grab that again, hold my control key down, and I can grab these two as well. So it's actually letting me select data that isn't right underneath each other. I couldn't just grab the whole group because I have a blank line in there and I've got gender in there. So holding my control key down, I can select data that's not right next to each other. So that's what I want. I'm going to hit enter and then click OK. I don't think it grabbed it. Let me try it again. It didn't. So I'm going to edit that one more time. I'm not sure what I did wrong there. Edit my horizontal axis. I'm going to click this. I need this and this. Hold my control key down. I want male and female. Hit enter. Okay. I'm going to try this again. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Just a second. Okay, it had to take a second and figure that out, but I know what I was doing wrong now. So I have to actually choose the data for the people who live in the area, and I want both age and gender. So I'm going to click on this, people who live in area, and I'm going to click on edit. Now, I still want that, that's correct, but I need to edit this, and you'll notice that I have, for this, I needed age and gender. So holding my control key down, I'm going to select that. Hold my control key down and select this. So I've got two sets of data there. And then hit enter and click OK. Alright, then I need to do it for the people who visit the area. And you'll notice now my male and female showed up there. The reason it wasn't showing up when I tried to edit the horizontal axis is because Excel didn't know that I was trying to select data over here as well, for each of the two different groups of people, the people who visit the area and people who live in the area. So I'm going to edit that one as well. This is okay, people who visit the area, and I need to edit this, and I need to select that data. So I'm going to hold my control key down and get these two as well. Hit enter and click OK. And you'll notice the male and female showed up over here. and I'm going to click OK. And so now I've got the male and female information as well for each of those different groups of people by income level. Now I need to edit this. So this is going to be age and gender instead. So I'm going to change that to age and gender. And I think that's all I need to change. I've got age and gender, all of this. This looks good. I'm going to move that so that I'm going to zoom down here. I'm going to zoom out so I can easily move that chart. And I want that chart right under this other one. Alright, I'm going to make that bigger so we can see it. Now let's take a look. Let's deselect everything. Let's take a look at how that looks if I were to print it. Okay, so it's going on to 3 pages. Okay, I don't like that. I want that to be on its own page. So I can use my page view. I'm going to click on view here and do page break preview. And the blue line is where my page is breaking, and you can see it here. So I want that. I'm going to move that up so that it breaks there instead. Okay, I'm going to go back to normal view, and I'm going to look at that again and look at how it looks on my page if I were to print it. So I've got the 2 graphs there, and I've got 2 more graphs there. Now what might look a little bit funny is this right here, this coming out on two lines here, but there's not anything I can do with that. You don't have that option to not have that show up when we selected it for the whole workbook. Alright, but I think that's okay. Alright, so that's the way it looks. We can see it here. Looks pretty nice. So you need to save that, do a file, save as, and save it where you're going to save it. Initially you were supposed to save it as Indiana Travel. I'm going to save it where I usually save things. Under demos, and I'm going to call this Indiana Travel Demo. Click on save, and then you can go ahead and submit that as your level 1 homework.